have such sights to show you.
We're Poppin the Scary horror podcast here. I'm your host, Coale, and with me as always, I have my good friend and co-host, Aaron.
Yeah,
Aaron, how you doing, man?
You know, man.
You look, yeah.
I just got a bunch of chicken.
Yeah, we're
sides?
getting chunked up.
Yeah, we're gonna chunkatize me, Cap.
Chunkatize me, Captain.
Who made the chicken chunk? I need to shake his goddamn hand.
Charlie.
Oh, where is he?
I don't know what happened to Charlie from Charlie's Chicken.
I gotta give him a call sometime. Next time I swing by the drive-thru, I'm gonna ask them to send my compliments directly. Oh, did he write hit movie 2017's It?
No, that's definitely not him.
Oh.
That was a nice segue, though. Nice trying to get this train on the caboose. It's Andy Muschietti, I believe.
Oh, Steve Buscemi.
Yeah, Steve Buscemi. Andre Muschietti. He's the one that's heading this remake here. Yes, so let's talk about clowns.
Okay.
Let's talk about clowns first before diving into the movie.
We talking about Clussy?
Like, for those that don't know, stay in the don't know, because that just slapped me real hard. Whenever it comes to clowns in general, clowns have always been kind of an interesting subject of fear for me specifically. Like, it's been a thing, like, I've noticed, like, oh yeah, people are afraid of clowns. Like, that was something I learned early on. Maybe it's because of Chucky from Rugrats or something like that. But whenever it comes to your stance with clowns, how scary are clowns innately to you?
I mean, like 0%. I love clowns. Wish people would bring clowning back.
I
sort of out of style. Nobody hires a clown for their kid's birthday party anymore. Now they're just like relics.
No, I definitely think there needs to be a clown renaissance of sorts.
I would like to go to clown college, but I can't find one anywhere.
Well, I'll try looking harder, but I'm sure they're around here somewhere.
I actually say that. At the university I went to, they actually did offer like a special clown masterclass one semester, and I did like a video project on it. And it was just like how to properly do slapstick comedy bits, and
that sounds terrific, dude.
It actually seemed really fun.
I wish I could have been a part of it there, but yeah. I'm kind of with you in the fact that clowns never innately scared me. I think like if they're murderous and stuff, then yeah, sure. Like they're scary, but that's not because they're a clown.
Right.
I mean, like, I'd be afraid if it was, like, a killer teddy bear, basically, going around. I'd still be nerve-wracking.
Tippers? He's scary, dude.
Oh, yeah, League of Legends. Yeah. I mean, have you seen the players?
Talk about scary.
But, yeah, so I've always found it fascinating. But, obviously, I don't know about you, but one of the most popular clowns in horror is Pennywise the Dancing Clown. Yeah. And have you ever had any experience hands-on? Because, I mean, obviously you knew before.
I put my hands on Pennywise's bright nose and honked it.
Do you have any, like, prior exposure to Pennywise exactly? Whether it's Stephen King's novel or the movies?
I have never exposed myself to Pennywise.
Okay, so
that's the clown's
job.
job.
You just kind of, you look at the clown and you're like, oh, that's it.
Yeah.
That's kind of...
That's it, the clown. That's Frankenstein, and not Frankenstein's the monster.
Yeah. So going into this episode, it's kind of already starting off at a peculiar note, because well-seasoned horror people that are listening may be like, why aren't you starting with the first iteration, which was a TV miniseries adapted straight from the book in 1990, where... it starred Tim Curry as Pennywise the Dancing Clown. Why not start with that one, since that one came first? And I thought about this for a while and stuff, but I feel like with this remake, almost serves as a better introduction and stuff. People may argue with me specifically, because I've only ever seen like people talk about the first It movie. It's been forever since I've sat through and watched the whole thing specifically. Because again, I tried watching it whenever I was a little tyke, scared the living daylights out of me there, which I promise you that's not why I'm avoiding it. It's just one of those things that I was thinking about, and I'm like, I feel like for a podcast about introducing two somebody a world of horror and stuff, I
Mm-hmm.
feel like it is a better way to dive into it due to the general narrative, because I won't spoil too much, but in the book it has a very deliberate narrative it does that can become disorienting and stuff. And the
Mm.
miniseries adapts pretty good from the book from what I've heard and seen clips of and everything else
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
there, but this one plays it a lot more straight laced with the narrative and doesn't jump around as much there specifically. So that's why for me, especially with how popular it is, because I'm curious. I know that you knew it very vaguely, but
Yeah.
did you know it more before the remake came out or after the remake came out? Because I know the remake is in more recent memory because it came out about 5 years ago in 2017.
I mean, yeah, I was vaguely aware of it before the remake, and then after the remake, I think is whenever I learned some of the, like pop culture bits about it. I know he like hangs out in a sewer and he's got a balloon, and it's like, hey kids, come on down here. We all float down here or something. That's all I know about.
Yeah,
it anyway.
and so
But I didn't know any of that until after the remake.
yeah, for sure. And so that's why I thought it would also be a great point to start out with. Now, in the future, we'll probably definitely dive into it because without spoiling too much, Tim Curry, I don't know your opinion of him, but
Yeah,
I
I
think
love
he's
Tim Curry.
yeah, me too. Me
Yeah.
too. And he's great in the movie as well. So I definitely want us to watch that at some point. I just thought somehow it might be a better introduction to the world of it going into this film specifically there. So, yeah, I'm not going to keep those chunks any colder than what they're getting. You know what I say? We need some chicken cubes, not chicken ice cubes. You know what I'm saying?
I need a large octahedron of chicken in my belly right
Oh my
now.
gosh. So we're going to be chowing down on some chicken, and we'll be right back after we watch It 2017.
A Space Odyssey.
Hiya, Georgie. What a nice boat.
We are now back from watching It. So what did you think of It?
Oh, that's the podcast, ladies and gentlemen. It was
Good night,
definitely-
everybody.
It was definitely one of the movies ever made.
Was it exactly what you thought it was going to be?
I don't know. I didn't have a whole lot of expectations. Yeah, the like one scene that I kind of was familiar with happened right at the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yep, the storm drain scene.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a movie.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in for a bumpy ride, it looks like.
We only have good insights here on Poppin the Scary. I feel like I haven't completely processed it, but we're gonna process out loud as we go.
Yeah. While you have time to process, how about I just give like a general idea and
Tell
story?
the folks what it is about.
Let me tell you about it.
What it is.
What is it? It. So, the folks that don't know exactly, it is originally a story that was written by Stephen King. I believe I want to say it was 83 whenever he wrote it. Obviously, I will confirm that, but this is a novel adaptation from Stephen King, and the story of it focuses on group of kids who basically kind of come together, uniting under one central theme, and it's the fact of they're all afraid of this one figure, but it's never been the same figure overall. And each of them has gone through their own plights and problems with it specifically, to where they start trying to uncover what exactly is going on. Starting off with Bill, who I would argue is probably the main character of the story, although it does take time to focus on the different characters, and the fact that he has something happen to him at the beginning that kind of prompts him to be obsessed with figuring out what exactly is going on in the town of Derry for them specifically. It's kind of hard to talk about because, again, it's like one of those things, like, on one hand, it's a spoiler, kind of, but on the other hand, it's at the beginning of the film, and you already knew about it specifically, but basically, his brother goes missing. There. So, because his brother goes missing, and all these kids are freaking out because of this figure that they end up calling it, hence the name of the title. It's just pretty much kind of like a mystery as they try to uncover what exactly is going on and if there's any other dark secrets that lie in the history of Derry as they come to find out. And it wasn't 83, it was 86, just add a correction there.
And the movie itself takes place in like 88, 89, something like that, right?
But here's the interesting thing. So a lot of people speculate this because you notice one of the actors was Finn Wolfhard, right? You
from Stranger Things.
And so this came out in 2017. So this is after Stranger Things basically started popping off. And so it was kind of a unique choice because in the book, the kids, it takes place in the 50s for them, specifically. And so for this adaptation, they did this remake, not the miniseries. The miniseries stuck exactly to the book time period-wise, where the kids are growing up in the 50s. And as you come to find out, it's a two-parter and stuff, as you could tell by the chapter 1 at the end. But then they jump back to the future as adults specifically.
Yeah, they did kind of tease that at the end too.
Yeah, not sure if that's spoiler or not. It's kind of like that weird, like that weird territory, but so that's basically the story of it overall, is them just uncovering stuff. But it is a very unique situation where with this film, they chose to take place in the 80s as opposed to the 50s. And so a lot of people speculate that's just because there's like a big 80s Renaissance hype, like that weird Goonies, Ghostbusters, kind of territory and stuff. And so because it was making a resurgence and Stranger Things kind of popularized it, that's why it did what it did. But
funny, interesting thinking about it, because this is late 80s and this movie would have come out in 2016, which was like 30 years, 30-year gap. And whenever Stephen King was writing this in the 80s about the 50s, there was also a 30-year gap. And we have a limited perspective because we're both millennials and we're like, oh, yeah, the 80s nostalgia is really popping off right now. But guess what was popping off in the 80s, I know for a fact, was 50s nostalgia.
Really?
People, people used to go to sock hops and stuff. They would like recreate that just like we have 80s and 90s parties now. If you like go to a hip-hop happening bar party downtown on New Year's Eve or something, they'll have like an 80s party because it's going to cash in on the nostalgia of people that were are now the people that will attend those things but were youths in the 80s. I mean, Stephen King writing this was probably like, oh yes, the good old 50s.
Yeah, because he grew up during the 50s there.
Right. So, looking back on the distinct cultural era of our youth is nothing new. It's interesting that they decided to adapt it and be like, yeah, let's make it the 80s.
Yeah. And I think it'll definitely play a interesting role whenever it comes to analyzing it. Because I feel like even though it takes place in the 80s, and aside from like a couple of nods reminding you it's the 80s, I feel like for the most part, it doesn't focus too terribly much on it.
It's not like Stranger Things where they're just like, hey, Dungeons and Dragons and arcade or whatever. It's the 80s. This one is just, it's just kind of the time period, and they set it appropriately, and there's, like you said, there's a couple nods, there's like a bunch of New Kids on the Blocks references. But other than that, it's not like hitting you over the head with it. Yeah,
for sure. And I know I kind of like briefly described the story there. What do you think of the story overall? Just kind of like how it starts and how it escalates and everything else.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of interesting because I feel like they take a long time to set up the story, right? Because the story itself is kind of like there's an it and kids are going missing. But that's like most of the movie. That's the majority of the movie. And it doesn't quite get into the like territory of where they're taken down the baddie. You know what I mean? Where they're pursuing it instead of being pursued, or really that they all agree that there isn't it takes a long time. So yeah, it's an interesting way to set up a story because they have to set it up for like the entire first half, and still make it interesting before it sort of begins the arc at all. But...
No, it is pretty surprising that it does take a little while for them, which the book, I mean, have you ever seen how big the book is?
Is it a big old
book? It's like this big, like it's huge. And granted, there is like a lot more that goes into it that I won't dive into yet specifically, but you know, Stephen King, he makes sure you know exactly everything that's going on with the scene and everything with the characters.
He likes to tickety tap away on his typewriter. That's what he likes to do.
Yeah.
He writes big books.
Yes. And they do not lie.
Yes. And he puts one out like every year.
Yeah. He's like Gutenberg with that printing press. Doing that. But it's one of those weird things that for me, this is I want to say third or fourth time I've seen this movie. I saw it once in theaters with my friend. Then I'm sure I saw it another time with my parents. Then I might have seen it with my wife. And then now this time. So it's kind of interesting going into it, knowing the story and stuff. And even though like I do enjoy a lot of the beats and stuff, I did feel like this time round it did drag a little bit. A little bit. It's like one of those things that it did take a while, and you know, I'm like waiting for like the certain beats to happen and stuff. But I think the thing that it does at least have the liberty of is I feel like the cast is fairly strong. I feel like all of the kids are super likable. Granted, you know, there is like the novel and stuff which goes in heavily, even more detailed about the kids specifically. Kind of like their overall fears and her attitudes and stuff. And but
I feel like I could even tell that there was some stuff that was slipped in from the novel, but definitely like super duper pared back. Like there's this whole arc with the bullies and like that's a conflict for a majority of the first half, and like how is that going to be resolved? And they do tie those storylines together, but I could see how in a book that would be like its own separate arc, you know, that then intertwines later and like carries the first part of it. But versus in a movie, you have a lot more you have to set up because you have so much less time. So yeah, they were kind of riding both waves in the beginning there. But...
No, for sure. And I guess since we've already mentioned it, how about we go through the cast of characters here specifically. So one of the people I did mention already was Bill, aka Stuttering Bill. Not that Bill, that Bill.
Okay.
But I felt like overall I believed his motivation of just like having his brother go missing.
All these kids are like traumatized in some way, and his trauma is like central to the plot. You know, his brother's missing.
Yeah, and so I felt like Jaden Martell did a very good job with the stuttering there, to where I did believe he had issues trying to talk.
Yeah.
Specifically. So like
I think he did a really good job, especially whenever he would break his stutter too. Like he would like there's a couple parts whenever he would get mad and he'd like overcome his stutter, but you could tell it's still kind of there. I was like, that's good acting. He was like, you know, fuck you.
Yeah. Yeah, and so and I think again it's important, and we're going to try to focus on this film more so as a movie as opposed to a novel. Yeah, as a movie. And so I feel like you see like his obsession basically be the one to be the driving force, because I don't think if it wasn't for Bill, I don't think anybody else would really have the comeuppance to you know, take a first step forward there. The only one that I would believe would do something was Beverly.
Yeah.
And stuff, which she was really great. I felt like between all the kid characters and stuff, I thought her performance was the strongest.
Yeah, she's also kind of like she plays the interesting role of like the older person. She's like a grade or two above them or something.
Yeah.
And so she's like a little older, a little more responsible, but also, as an actor, it puts the pressure on you to be like like an older figure than like sort of an authority of some sort, like a leader. And she does kind of lead alongside Bill, the two like leaders of that group.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like even though it's not more apparent whenever the kids, even though they're supposed to be like middle schoolers, you could tell they're like older teens and stuff, but that you believe everything they do. Not to say that usually around teenagers aren't believable, but it's more of a more so even mix than what it is with child actors, where it's like, it takes a really hard long time to find a child actor that's like, yep, I believe that's child 112%.
Right.
And I feel like all the characters are believable in their roles specifically, and I feel like they all stand out individually as opposed to being just like, again, like unmemorable just background. Although I feel like it is difficult for the film to divide up the time each character gets to where you get a big idea on who they are. They have to kind of be very quick about it. They have to be deliberate.
Yeah, they're forced to be a little bit caricatures, because it's like, here's the guy that's afraid of this, and this is the person that's afraid of this, and this is the person whose mom wants things to be really clean.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, I feel like even given that big limitation, I feel like the movie did a good job with it. And the kids acted it all well.
No, absolutely. And once again, major kudos to Sophia Lillis, who played Beverly.
Shout out
personally.
to Sophia.
Yeah.
Woo!
Doing that. And of course, we've already mentioned him a couple of times, but we might as well talk about Finn Wolfhard's character as Richie.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that in Stranger Things, I can't stand his character.
Really?
I think he's very whiny and unmotivated there. Well, yeah, I think he's just so unlikable. But then again, I have a lot of issues with the characters in Stranger Things for the most part. But that's like a whole different thing. All I'll say is Steve number 1. That's all I'll say.
Wait, is Steve the older guy with the hair?
Yes, that hair. Oh,
yeah.
So good.
I haven't watched past season 2, because season 2 is kind of a bummer to me.
Oh, wait till you get to season 3.
Well, that's why I didn't watch season 3.
Yeah. And soon I'll be watching season 4, because my wife loves Stranger Things.
Season 1 was like poggers, dude. Season 1 was really good up until you saw the Stranger Thing. Up until you saw the monster.
Demogorgon.
Yeah, and then it kind of started to go...
No, I believe that.
I feel that way about a lot of alien monster kind of movies, where like, sometimes once you see the creature, it's just not as good.
It takes away the mystique of it.
It
I
does.
totally agree.
Anyway.
But I will say with Finn Wolfhard, I do find him really entertaining as Richie.
Yeah, I love his character in this one. He's just kind of like the extroverted friend who won't shut up and cracks jokes.
Absolutely. He's constantly doing impersonations, which I have read a bit of the novel. I've still been working through it because it's a big boy. But he does like a lot of impressions. That's like part of his character and stuff. So it was really cool getting to see that aspect of him specifically.
Hey, you want to hear my impression of Ronald Reagan?
Yeah.
I hate black people.
Oh, well, is that Ronald? Is that the
he
ghost
in the
of
room
Ronald?
right now? Let's put crack in their community.
Oh my! Oh man! I
just picked a figure that I actually don't have an impression.
No,
for.
you're good. I was just thinking about Smiling Friends. Zach did an impersonation of Reagan. It's so good. Please remind me to show you after the podcast episode.
I watched all the Smiling Friends, but it's like a blur. That whole
it's the one with the frowning friends. The one whenever the head of the Smiling Friends is like losing its mind. It's like, well, what I believe we should do, and it's with the Mr. Peanut. Yeah.
Well, I don't know what that peanut or that fellow over there is saying, but I believe you should try to win back the marketplace with a more competitive business model.
All right. Well, this is maybe a bit to edit out there, but anyways, Richie, I feel like he's definitely needed for the group there, just to kind of add comedy, because really not a lot of the other characters add too many jokes there specifically. So he definitely kind of livens it up. And while I would say like, oh yeah, he's the best and stuff, I don't he's not my personal favorite, but I do feel like he's enjoyable, has a lot of good laughs, and is a solid addition to the group.
I do think he's necessary too, because without him, like imagine that group without him, that would be a Debbie Downer.
Yes, it would be, because nobody else.
Whiners.
Yeah, like doing a lot of jokes. Really, the only other person that I laughed at was Eddie, which, you know, how big of a hypochondriac he is, specifically just being protected. And he was also a great addition, I felt like, who's also played by Jack Grazer. Yeah.
Probably a lot of his comedy wasn't like his character trying to be funny, but like he was
it's just him freaking out
to be the butt of the joke. Yeah.
No.
I love the part with the what did he call them?
Oh yeah, you're talking about the placebos.
Yeah, he's like, these are gazebos.
That was my favorite line too, dude. Like I just thought that was brilliant. Like the first time I said it, because again, he's not playing it as a joke. He's just being dead serious.
He's just being a kid.
And that just what makes it super funny. So yeah, that definitely was a favorite line of mine later on. So yep, major kudos to that. But I feel like how much they bicker towards each other, like Richie and Eddie towards each other and stuff. I do feel like it does make it sound like more of a natural young friends group there, specifically whenever you get that big.
I think the dialogue was written really well. I don't know how much of it, if most of it, I imagine, was lifted from the book, but a lot of it did seem to fit the time period of like the kinds of things the young kids are saying to each other, and it wasn't it wasn't like, you know, sometimes you hear high school dialogue and it's like, hey, you know, let's go to the fucking bleachers and play some football, listen to my record player, whatever adults think kids say. This sounded like you're riding on a middle school bus and they're saying the shit that kids say to each other.
No, I love how much they curse. It's great.
Yeah.
You know, especially Richie just cursing so much is so funny, because you just don't expect it, because they always try to avoid having kids speak like that when realistically kids are speaking like that all the time.
Right. Especially this group of kids. They're kind of the outcast loser kids.
Definitely really funny. And going through the rest of the Losers Club, as it's known, there is Ben, played by Jeremy Taylor, and Tits, as he's lovingly called by Henry. I felt
Truffle.
I kind of liked his character and stuff, because like as much as I love Chunk in the Goonies and stuff, it was nice to see, like, again, them not try to copy Chunk, especially, you know, just being in the 80s fat kid and stuff. He's just like a nice boy, just trying his best. And
he's a shy kind of, you know, new kid in town.
And he also is, you know, again, a great element to have, because he provides a lot of exposition in the story. Just the fact he's new in town, doesn't have friends, kind of a nerd and stuff, and he's wanting to look at stuff, so. And
I'll kind of spoiled his aspect. It's also an integral part of a love triangle.
Oh yeah, that'll be an interesting thing to dive into.
So that fuels part of the quote unquote conflict that isn't the scary clown part.
The scary clown part.
It's the other conflict.
Yeah, surprisingly, there is a lot of conflicts in this movie besides a scary clown.
You could tell that a lot of these like conflict lines are something that'll be written in a very long novel that they just decided to like smear into the movie, which is good. It's good to have multiple things that you're worrying about or tracking whenever you're watching a movie, because it could get boring just like waiting for a clown to eat people. But
no, absolutely.
You also got to be like, what about the bullies? What about the girl? Who's gonna get the girl? Who's gonna kiss the clown?
Who's gonna kiss the clown?
Yeah.
Who's gonna get the clussy?
Oh, sign me up.
Oh my god.
I'm part of a Facebook group called Clown Girl Honk Heaven. Shouts out to all the classy clown girls in there. Honk honk, am I right?
I'm sorry, I've never heard that Facebook page before, and I'm just dying laughing.
Exclusive.
Oh, dang. I wish I could get so lucky. To stay up all night for the clussy.
For the clussy.
We're up all night to get clussy.
It's a dangerous part of the internet. Don't sign on, or you'll find yourself with a clown fetish that very few can fill. It's hard to find a woman that was willing to dress up like a clown for you. There's a lot of makeup involved. It's a lot of prep time. Just to get out of a tiny car, spritz you with seltzer. Woo, getting a little.
We're gonna have to take the boys to a circus, am I right?
I'm getting a little. There's a circus in my pants right now. Some action, trapeze act happening.
Oh my god. This is becoming so far the dirtiest episode of Poppin the Scary
Yeah,
you've
but
ever seen.
let's get to the last child in this group.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few more children to talk about.
There's
but
more?
Yeah, because
The last. Oh yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
So there's the. I was about to just reduce them to characters, but then I realized these are probably the worst to just reduce to stereotypes.
yes, please stop, pump the brakes.
Because if we were talking about the other ones, I'd be like, there's the germaphobe, there's the nerd, and then these characters are literally just like the Jew. I mean, that's his little character. He's the son of the rabbi. Like, he was written in to be as Jewish as possible.
Yeah, Stan.
Yeah, he's coming up on his bar mitzvah, you know? That's his character, I'm sorry.
No, I definitely feel like between all the characters, he does get a bit of the short stick whenever it comes to development there.
Yeah.
Really, he's kind of meant to be there as a foil almost to any conflict there. Just being like, no, I don't know about this. Like,
yeah, because there's a lot of pressure on him to be a good kid. You know, he's the rabbi's son. And I feel like it could have been more interesting explored if they had more time. You know, like in a TV series or in a book. But yeah, as far as the movie goes, I do think he was given the jip.
Yeah, and overall, I feel like he does the part fine. Like, you know, again, I don't feel like he's completely Wonder Bread sliced, like nothing to him and stuff. It's more like a wheat bread.
Yeah.
You know, just a little bit.
I do think the personification of his fear is one of the scarier ones.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I feel like
woman thing.
Oh yeah, no, because I feel like everybody can relate to that fear of just finding that painting that kind of like unnerved or scare you, and it stays kind of permeated in your mind a bit.
If you've never seen a scary painting, go look some up. They'll stick with you.
Oh, absolutely. And so I feel like Wyatt Olaf does a good job for what little he's given overall there. And then finally, the last person that you didn't want to
didn't want to reduce to a stereotype.
Yeah, stereotype
is the only black person in the cast.
Absolutely, Mike, played by Chosen Jacobs, and I feel like he definitely has a lot more of the, you know, fantastical horrors and real life horrors going on at the same time.
Right. Well, all the characters have some degree of real life horrors. But yeah, his. I mean, this isn't a spoiler because it happens right in the beginning. It's like he's like the son of I will say he's on his grandparents' farm. His parents aren't around, and he's like required to kill these sheep at the beginning,
which is brutal,
right? Which is foreshadowing. But he's like, what is he, like 12 in this movie or something? And he's having to take the old bolt gun to the between the eyes and slaughter these sheep.
Yeah, and so, again, it just kind of, he's already just in a state of just being uncomfortable, feeling out of place, not really welcome anywhere, and as we come to find out later in the story there, a lot of the people are kind of more antagonistic towards him, specifically, and you are right, there are a lot of characters that have, like, a lot of real-life horrors going on, but I guess in my mind, I was thinking just, like, also just in the fact that he feels like he can't even walk outside without something bad happening.
Right.
He's like constantly.
He's also homeschooled, so he's not connected except for to these other characters. Except for he becomes connected to them because people are bullying him because he is homeschooled and because the color of his skin. That comes up from one of the bullies at one point.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I feel like this is again kind of a Stan situation where you feel like you get to kind of know his character, but he's just kind of there, unfortunately. And it's like
there's so many kids to give character to, and just not enough time to fully flesh them all out.
And so I don't feel like it's the actor's fault at all in the slightest. It's just the moments you do get to see any sort of like moments of his characteristics popping out and stuff is very short-lived there. And, you know, it just kind of adds to the numbers of the Losers Club there.
Yeah.
But overall, I still feel like it's a very strong cast of characters because, again, it's hard to have a runtime, you know, because it was like just a little over 2 hours, and you know, it has a whole story to tell.
Yeah.
And it is kind of having to be reduced down to characters like you mentioned and
Right.
stuff. It just kind of sounds bad whenever you're like, oh yeah, you know, there's the awkward stuttering kid, the fat kid, you know, the mouthy kid, the Jewish kid, the black kid,
germaphobe.
and the germaphobe kid, and so
And they all walk into
and
a
the
bar.
girl.
And the girl.
Yes.
And that's actually her character. She's the girl.
Absolutely. But the one bully, like, I might as well talk about the head bully, because I feel like the other bullies don't stand out
That's the
too
one.
much.
Yeah, that's the one other character that I do think we need to take. There's like 4 bullies. The leader of the bullies is a dude with a mullet. And
Yeah.
he's fucking a lot more hateful than the other ones.
Oh yeah, no, Henry Bowers, and I think that's the thing I like about the performance done by Nicholas Hamilton is it's not just like, you know, high school, like shove you to a locker kind of bully. No, this is like terrorizing bully, like fearful stuff. And again, he starts to like terrorize a lot of the kids more so than others to violent degrees. And I feel like the character arc they give him overall is really interesting. Like, it's not just complete like one note like, oh, dweeb and stuff. No, there's like a big kind of psychological kind of dig that you start to notice with him,
Right.
and like how just visceral he is with the violence.
And I do think that's one of the like, one of the there's a lot of elements of real life that play into the other part of the story, which is obviously the clown killing folks, and that are also scary. I think what the movie does well and what the story does well is like scary stuff in, you know, regular life, and then, you know, scary stuff in clown killing you. And the scary stuff in real life, I feel like that bully's actually like one of the more terrifying parts of the movie. The way you see him progress into, he's obviously like one of those kids that you'd see like throwing bugs in the fire, and like, you know, he's growing into a Jeffrey Dahmer type of guy, you know, like he's seeing the signs of like, this kid's not right, and then he just has his jerk off friends, and his jerk off friends are even being like, bro, you're taking this too far.
Which I think is a nice touch, that they're just kind of like, I don't know about this, you know, that there's a bit of humanity to him, whereas
but then you notice they even get scared into following what he says.
No,
So,
absolutely. And so they're also kind of just roped in. So I feel like it's definitely, like, for a movie about a killer clown, it's really interesting to have like these other elements also add to the overall horror and fear, which I think is really interesting kind of thing. And again, obviously plays from the novel, but I feel like, again, with the movie, it displays that horror and fear really well.
Right.
Overall.
It's super central to the movie. It's just the concept of fear in general.
And I know we've kind of talked about him, or it, should I say, multiple times, so why don't we talk about it?
Pennywise!
Pennywise, that dancing clown. Played by Bill Skarsgård. So, with all the hype and anticipation for this killer clown, how did Pennywise do for you overall?
As like a killer on his own, I don't know, man. Kind of like me.
A little disappointed?
I like the design. Okay, I like how he's written. What fuels him, where he gets his power from. But there are some things that we can talk about more in spoiler territory about, perhaps like the origin of Pennywise, or what does, you know, get him going, that were a little disappointing to me. But some of the effects were really cool, and I love a killer that like is playing. You know what I mean? Like a Freddy Krueger type or whatever.
Yeah.
Like a killer that's having fun, and that's kind of their motivation-ish for killing. Is that they're... Because it does let you get away with a lot of cooler horror things and like near misses, whereas a normal killer would just be like, I shot you with a gun, cool, you're dead, or whatever, you know, like,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to kill, and they're actually chasing you down. He's like, he's a clown, he's clowning around.
Yeah.
So I do like that aspect in a killer. So I mean, overall I liked him, but yeah, there were a few things that were just like, it's a clown that kills people, you know.
Yeah, it didn't quite like hit the mark for you and stuff, especially with how much hype and anticipation you probably have heard about Pennywise multiple times.
Yeah.
Which again, it's always hard to know, especially with both the miniseries and these newer movies out, which Pennywise people are talking about specifically.
And I also might be like negatively influenced. Like, this just might be on me, because by this point, by 2022, clowns as being scary is like faux pas. It's been done, but like probably when Stephen King wrote this, it hadn't been done. I don't know. It wasn't like a big trope like it is now. I don't know if he influenced or created that trope, but now it's just like, I feel like if you're gonna do the scary clown thing, you gotta do it a little bit better. But
yeah, I think the thing with the fear of clowns overall, I think Stephen King definitely added to the fire of it specifically. But I know that a lot of people that are terrified of clowns, it's just because they almost seem like uncanny valley, to where they look human but not too human. And they just act way differently.
I feel like it's the same thing that people are scared of mascots. You know what I mean? Where they're just like, and that's a real fear that more people than you would expect have it. And I know, because I used to be a high school mascot. And everywhere I went, there was at least one person that was, like, terrified.
Really?
Yeah. And you'd usually find them because their dickhead friends would be like, hey, she's really scared. Like, go scare her.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, why would I do that?
Yeah, exactly. Like, bro.
When they'd, like, drag their friend in front. But, like, yeah, everywhere I went, there was at least one person that was just terrified. And kids, of course, are terrified. Yeah. And, you know, of Chuck E. Cheese or whatever, there's always, like, 4 kids crying. Because it's just weird. It's abnormal. It's like kind of human, but it's not. You know?
Yeah. And I do get the idea and everything else about you saying, like, I could tell they put a lot into this character, like, thought wise. It wasn't just scary clown go specifically.
Right.
So.
A lot of the motivations and themes and stuff are around scary clown, and really just in the movie in general, because it's not just Scary Clown the movie. There's so much more involved there.
No,
I appreciate, but I do think, like, when he's actually killing people, it's just like, it's a clown killing people, you know?
Yeah. With me personally, because I knew about, like, the Tim Curry, like, scenes and stuff, like, seen it multiple times, or clip shows or anything like that showing off Tim Curry, and without getting into too many spoilers, it's Tim Curry. You should know exactly how it should go, exactly as a clown.
Is it just me, or does this clown look a little Tim Curry?
I think it was one of those things that whenever it came to designing the clown, they tried to stay more closer to the book and not feel like they're copying after the movie, because there's people that don't like the miniseries at all, but they still love Tim Curry as it there, and it got iconic. And they did actually give a little nod in one of the rooms in the house they go visit, where you see like a little clown doll that's dressed exactly like Tim Curry. But I felt like, because have you ever seen the original It costume?
I feel like I must have, but I can't conjure the image in my mind.
It's like one of those things where it doesn't look exact, but I could see why you thought that it was trying to copy it specifically. So, you know, it does copy it a little bit, but it's definitely just more of the red and white, which aesthetically I feel like works well for him overall.
Right.
And stuff just makes him look more ethereal and everything else. And I will say, kind of going into this, I didn't know how I would feel about someone else than Tim Curry playing it specifically. I think it's always hard whenever you have iconic role for a character and somebody else comes in to take in that spot specifically. I feel like there's a lot more scrutiny that goes into it. And so whenever I watch it, I was genuinely surprised with the performance Bill Skarsgård did specifically, and just how he could go from being goofy to just being more like primal and stuff. Because there's like times where he'll just be joking, laughing, clown stuff, and then he'll just be dead stare, drooling, everything else there. And apparently, like, did you ever notice his eyes would get cockeyed?
Oh,
like you know, like one eye's going one way over the other.
Like he did a lot of stuff with his eyes, but not just like in the normal dialogue parts. I didn't notice that.
Mm-hmm. But apparently, Bill Skarsgård could screw up his eyes like and on purpose. It wasn't like CG in like some of the moments there. So anytime you saw like cockeyed and stuff, that was him doing that, and that's what he did at his audition. Whenever he was just really trying to sell, just like something trying to take a form of a clown, because as you could tell, he's not just a regular clown,
right?
You know, he's it there specifically. But I was overall impressed with the takes he did specifically, but it was one of those things that the first time I saw it, I felt like seeing him was like being on a roller coaster and stuff. It was just kind of like scary but fun. Yeah. And this one is just kind of like one of the ones where it's like, oh yeah, you know, this is still really enjoyable. You know, like the impact still takes away a little bit, as opposed to some monsters, like whenever they arrive and stuff, you're like, getting super hyped. But he's really enjoyable and entertaining, and especially whenever he's talking to Georgie at the beginning of the film, I felt like it was especially important they nailed that scene, and I felt like he did extremely well in that scene.
I would agree. Yeah, that was probably him at his strongest, was right there at the beginning for me personally, because it really established sort of the personality, and that was probably where he was at his most fun, kind of luring him in. I do feel like in a lot of other parts of the movie, he quit being like, I think what makes a clown scary is that they're trying to be happy and like enticing and cheer you up or whatever, but you're terrified of them. And I just didn't see that a lot of that moments. And I don't see that a lot in clowns in general in scary stuff. So like, I feel like that could have been played upon a little bit more. But in the beginning there, it was really good. Yeah.
No, I feel like overall, I feel like he did an excellent job, which, you know, it's one of those things that maybe later on we'll have to watch the miniseries, which is going to be a long movie because it's a miniseries there specifically. So perhaps in the future we could take a look at it and see how you feel about the performance with Tim Curry there. But Bill Skarsgård, for me, definitely I'm like, you know what? I really approved of this. I loved his outfit. I love just the moments he got to have there specifically to where he is like one of my favorite things to watch about in this film is just seeing Pennywise basically screw around with the kids overall.
Right. Yeah, those are fun moments.
But so the character section definitely took way longer than most of the horror movies.
There's a lot of characters.
Yeah, definitely a lot of characters to focus on specifically. And I was mentioning about a lot of the special effects, which there's not too many there, but anytime they start pulling off the special effects, it's just because of Pennywise specifically is around overall. And what do you think about Pennywise and how he basically was causing fear to arise in most of the kiddos?
In the beginning, before I really got it, and there's a thing to get, so I don't really want to spoil that. But before I really got what was going on, I was just like, what's the point of this clown spooking all these kids? You know what I mean? But I did, like, once I got to that point, I was like, oh, that's really smart. I get what's happening here.
Yeah, which I'm sure you weren't expecting that, and especially with the large cast, I'm sure you were expecting things to go way differently than what it did.
Right, exactly. I thought, you know, it doesn't really follow the typical horror movie path, which, but I think that's to its credit. And I think it could have easily copped out there and just started, you know, like, you know, a typical horror movie is just like, okay, gonna kill one person, two people, three. There's a lot of like a lot of movies I can think of that like all the cast except for one or two people's dead by the halfway part. And that's not really this cast wants to develop all these characters, so it doesn't really go down that path. But yeah, at the beginning I was like, what is the point of all these little Pennywise scenes if like people aren't dying left and right? Not that people aren't dying, don't worry.
Yeah.
But yeah, but yeah, once I got it, and there's a thing to get, I was like, oh, okay. And I don't know, so this might be one that would be cooler to watch on a second viewing and be like, oh, okay, I get it. But without that, my initial impression was just like, this is kind of getting slow. I was like, I feel like we're like an hour in here and like nothing's happened, but things were happening. I just wasn't clicking why we were making these developments. But.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely did, like, and being the third or fourth time I've seen this movie, it did feel slower and stuff, and it was like one of those things that I didn't know if it's just because like maybe I'm just a little more antsy, because the first two times I watched it I was like, oh man, this is just great, this is like super, like, wow, amazing. And watching it this time around, it wasn't that it was like, oh okay, this is just bad or slog, or even like American Werewolf in London, where I'm like, yep, same thing. It was just one of those things I'm like, huh, okay, like, I still enjoy it. I still like a lot of it. I think one of the things that I like about it, one of the things I like a ton about it is the overall visuals of it there. It just screams summertime. Yeah. There, and just captures the spirit of just being a kid and hanging out with it, which is like why I wanted to watch it, with summer going on and everything. So I really enjoy that aspect of it specifically. But it does definitely take its time and move along slowly, but at the same time I feel like it has to take those moments.
It does.
Because I feel like if they just sped it up, the characters would not get hardly any time to develop. The mystery of Pennywise would still be just a mystery.
Right. And that's what I think is interesting about this is, to me, and I could be totally off base, but my first impression of once having completed this movie is Pennywise is like not the point of this movie. Like, the movie is not about, which is funny because you watch like Halloween, the point of the movie is Michael Myers. That's the thing. There's a scary guy, he's killing people. This is like, Pennywise is there, but that's not like, and he's causing the conflict. But that's not really the point, and it's not even really the bad guy. For the movie. So it's really interesting because, like, at first I was like, well, what's the point of this clown? And then I was like, oh, the point is, what's the point of this clown?
No, I definitely agree. And I feel like, again, kind of focusing on some stuff, there's some stuff that if I didn't like it the first time round, it still doesn't work out good. Because I feel like there's one particular scene with the rocks that I felt like, it just kind of broke the overall tone of the movie for me. I thought so a little bit there, specifically, just because it makes it kind of feel more like, it reminds me of those high school movies where it's like, Foo Fight, kind of, it reminded me of that specifically. Like, I got the significance of it, and I felt like it was nice, but I guess also in a sense, those moments that seem kind of pointless also continue to add to the friendship of the characters, just so you buy it, because there's like the swimming and
I've got a big brain theory, but I don't want to share it yet, so remind me of the rock scene when we get to the spoilers section.
I think I would like to I
like it.
Okay, well, that'll be really interesting there, because again, it's not like a scene that I'm like, oh my god, but it's like, kind of slowing down the pace again a bit, and just playing like the heavy rock music over it there. But I'm definitely curious. I will pick your brain about it. I'll be sure not to forget the rock.
Right. It's two things. It's a character development scene, which I feel like you pick up on, right? For the kids and the bully, right? It's character development for both, and plot progression for both. But then it's also kind of key to how they beat the bad guy, and I'll tell you why when we get to spoilers section.
I really want to know this. Yeah, I really want to know. So let's try to get to spoilers quickly. One other thing I will say is I do like the music in the film. Like, I love the simple piano, and especially love how effectively they use it at the beginning, because you hear like the piano playing and stuff, and you're like, okay, that's just the music the movie is playing. But then whenever you get downstairs, you see the moms playing the piano and stuff, which I thought was a nice touch. But it definitely kind of, it's like one of those things, like, you ever hear like kind of more melancholic music that dances on the line of like horror and just sad and stuff there. So I really liked the music that was done.
It's like storming outside at the beginning, and you're hearing this song, and the kid has to have a spooky moment where he's going into the basement and the light won't come on,
Yeah, no.
It's just like, ooh, it
No.
sets the mood.
No, it definitely sets the mood there, which I definitely appreciate a ton. And so major kudos goes out.
It's kudos time. Major kudos to who?
To Benjamin
Let's
Wallfish.
go Benjamin Wallfish.
Woo!
Woo! Did you know he's actually that bass that you press the button on the wall and he goes, "Ain't nothing but a hound dog," or whatever they sing? Yeah.
Somehow I doubt that.
Yeah, that's him. That's Benjamin Wallfish.
I mean, if you want to lie to me like that, sure.
Perks of being a wallfish.
Perks.
Perks of being a wallfish.
So music's definitely good
Music,
there.
good. Scenery. It's New England.
Yeah. Derry.
Special effects. 2017 CGI. Boom. We covered all of our bases.
Let's see. Was there any other pros or cons you wanted to mention before spoilers?
I did point out whenever we first sat down, I was like, we're in New England, and you could tell as soon as you, and then, but then that actually, because I was like, why is every horror movie set somewhere in New England? Because you could just tell by the houses and stuff.
Yeah.
But then, like, they pretty quickly established that this is Derry, Maine, and the town is actually like a central important part. It's like a lot of the story revolves around this town specifically.
Yeah.
Which I do wonder, is that a real town?
I believe it might, because again, like Stephen King uses this setting 24/7,
And he lives up in that part of the world, so I'm sure he's writing what he knows. But...
Let's see. So Derry is a fictional town in the state of Maine. There specifically.
Not real.
Yeah, not real, but
it does feel like, I mean, I've got a lot of family up there, not in Maine specifically, but in like Pennsylvania and stuff, and like I have been to small town northeast states, and it is, you know, population, just the kids that have gone missing, you know, and it's like it's a vibe. I love that setting for horror because it really does feel like you're in a vacuum, you know what I mean? Like, there's what happens there in the town is the only things that matter, and there's nothing else out there.
Yep. And just to get confirmation, just because I was like, is Derry a real place? No, it's not real, and it's based on Bangor, a couple of hours of the interstate from Portland.
Okay, so the other side of the north.
So he loves using that setting and lives up there and stuff, which I feel like it's cool to have like an author like take the time to really focus on a specific town as opposed to like, oh, it's just a average town and stuff. I mean, that's why I like My Bloody Valentine so much, is like the town itself that's depending on the mind. I feel like it just makes it a much more unique setting.
Right.
So
love me a town that's central to the plot.
Yep. No, and I feel like they do a good job of really diving into the history.
You said doo-doo. He said doo-doo, guys.
All right, this podcast is over. I do like how there is a mystery that starts to unfold about Derry and kind of disturbing, and it plays a little bit, although there is some goofy moments that shows up in the past.
Oh, Family Guy funny moments number 42.
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's my favorited video on YouTube.
Me and you both.
But yeah, so I don't think there's too much we can dance around.
Dancing clown, dance around.
But we're going to jump into spoilers. But first, we got to talk about ratings.
Yeah.
So, Aaron, what would you rate it 2017?
I would give it high 6, low 7.
That's pretty good.
6.57. I do feel it was good. We've kind of touched on the things that I thought were not great, like the slow pacing in the beginning, but it makes sense later. I forgive a lot of the things that I thought were minor faux pas because I see what they were trying to do. And I do think it is a lot more ambitious and a lot more eloquent than your typical horror movie. But I also feel like it wasn't really that scary. Even just everything combined. Honestly, the parts where I grimaced the most was whenever they were doing a blood pact and cutting their hands with a dirty bottle. I was like, ooh, but that wasn't even supposed to be a scary part. It was just like, oh, why are you doing that? But they were trying to do a lot. They did do a lot, and some of the things that fell through the cracks, I forgive them for. So yeah, 6.5, 7-ish.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there. I do like a lot of things. I think my big thing is there's not a whole lot that I just loved. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I do like a fair bit of it.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. With me personally, it's kind of one of those things that I'm like, I'm going down a little bit from what I rated it before, but it's not that far. Like, it's like around the same territory as, frankly, the last two films, where I feel like personally for me, it's hitting around like the 7.5 to 8, range there, specifically where Evil Dead 2 and American Werewolf in London is kind of jumbled up, because there's things I love about those films individually, but there is also some things that I'm like, okay, it's whatever. And so I feel like it's all kind of tangled up there specifically, and in all honesty, I couldn't tell you exactly where each one lands in front of it there. I feel like this film, though, is still really good. Like, it's still really good, even if I didn't enjoy it as much as I did the first couple of times I've watched this movie. It's still a good movie. There's still a lot, and I'm still dying for that super cut that's supposed to come out with the film
Zack
there.
Snyder cut.
I know, Andy, Bubby, you gotta make a move on. You announced this like potentially back in 2020, and I know that a lot's been happening since then, but come on, Andy.
The scariest thing that's happened is you haven't made an announcement.
So I think, overall, it's around that range. It's hard for me to define. Like, if I was to rate, like, stack the movies like that are hitting around that range, it'd probably be American Werewolf in London, Evil Dead 2, then maybe it right above Evil Dead 2. It could interchange there. So it's like more closer to 8 than American Werewolf in London is. I know I told American Werewolf it was like 7.9999999, but it's just around that area. There's stuff I really like about it, but then there's also some stuff that I'm like, okay, and stuff. But yeah, so that is our overall ratings of it. Now let's talk about that rock scene in the spoiler section.
The rocks. You want to skip right to the rock? All right.
I didn't want to forget. I just got to be
right.
honest.
Well, let me preface everything I'm going to say in this setting by saying that there's two main themes here, and I didn't even mean to make a main pun, but we're talking about main. Two main themes here. The first one's pretty obvious and essential to the movie. You kind of get it like an hour in or so. Is that fear is the main theme, and overcoming these fears is the only way that they can beat Pennywise, right? Because he feeds on fear.
Mm-hmm.
The second main theme, which is not as important to the rock scene, is coming of age, right? It's growing up. It's becoming an adult is a central theme, and they sprinkle this in a lot of different parts, even just with little things like the reason Bev is in the pharmacy in the first place is because she's buying tampons, right? And her dad is like, "You're still my little girl, right?" He doesn't want her to grow up. There's all these little things about growing up, and becoming an adult. Adults can't see Pennywise or his tricks or whatever. And so it's important for them to grow up. But it's also important for them to overcome their fears, because if Pennywise feeds on fear, obviously, is what you learn in the later half of the movie, and they only beat him by not being afraid of him anymore. But it's not him, necessarily, that they're not afraid of. Obviously, they go through and they're facing their traumas, and they become unafraid of the things that they were fearful to begin with. So the reason why I like that rock scene, as I remind the audience, there's a part where there's some kid. It's the homeschool kid, right? That's where they meet the homeschool. No, who is it? Who is it that they're beating up?
They're beating up Mike.
Yeah. So they're beating up Mike, and they see the bike, and they see the bully's car, and the gang's like, "Oh, we gotta go save this kid," or whatever. And that's actually the first step in their journey to overcoming their fears, so that they don't get eaten by Mr. Pennywise and they can beat him later, right? Because they have to go confront these bullies that they were afraid of in order to save Mike, right? And so I like the rock scene for that reason, because it's the first stepping stone, if you will, on their journey to beating Pennywise, is because they confront a fear, they confront these bullies, by throwing rocks at them, and they win, and they're triumphant. And even Mike makes a comment of like, now they're going to come after you, and they're like, he's already coming after us, you know. They're not scared anymore suddenly of that one thing that they all united them, that one fear that all united them, and that they acknowledge was, they're like, okay, I guess that's the one thing that ties us all together, you know. So that part I liked. The second half of why I like it is because it also develops the bully guy. It's the first thing that starts making him sort of piss his pants. You know, he's a fearful guy. And then cut later to the scene where he's shooting bottles and then wants to shoot a cat, and his dad comes in and like scares the shit out of him by taking his gun and shooting at his foot. And he's like, look what fear does to a paper boy or whatever.
Yeah.
That gives him the motivation, right? He's already scared because he's been triumphed by these people that he was picking on that are smaller than him. Now someone bigger than him, an adult, it makes him afraid, you know, exposes his fear to his friends. And that's like the last straw for him. Immediately after that scene, he sees the balloon in the mailbox. He goes and finds his knife. From
which
Pennywise.
I love the way that scene is done.
Pennywise fuels the fear because he needs the fear. And that is a fear of his father or whatever. And he's like, kill him. And so he kills him, and then he uses the bully as sort of like an extension of Pennywise later as a fear creator and as a killer. And you obviously even tell that at the end scene where he has got blood all over his face, and it looks like the makeup of Pennywise in that basement scene. So that's why I like the rock scene. I know it was kind of corny that he was like rock fight or whatever.
I just like, it's like one of those scenes that I expect the Ramones Hey Oh to start playing, you know.
Let's go.
You know, like, and so I think that's the thing. And then like the slow-mo of like the bullies going, you know, and like, so it's like one of those things I'm like, okay, this is kind of cheesy there specifically, but I do like that you're able to give me the perspective on a literary sense on what it represents. Because again, I think Henry Bowers is definitely a character you probably were not expecting to become as developed as he was.
Yeah.
Specifically, usually the bullies are just resorted to just, you know, I'm the bad guy,
Right.
you know, I'm just a bully there. But, you know, again, I feel like the performance that's done for Henry Bowers there, I mean, you see him go through like an entire arc where at the beginning he's just starts off as that bully of just picking on kids one after another. And then whenever it came for Ben, whenever he would have the bully friends help pin him down as he's cutting into his flesh, his own name there, like that just kind of like opens something.
And I will just point out this minute little detail. He's going to carve his name in his flesh, right? And he starts with the H, which, like, if you notice, if you just move the little horizontal line a little bit over, it says it.
No, don't.
Instead of an
Oh
H,
God.
it's it. Yeah, because he becomes the sort of personification of Pennywise.
Okay, I was not expecting that.
You see that palm there?
Oh my God. But
all he gets is the H. You'll go back, watch the movie. You'll see it looks like it.
no. Well, I'll have to watch it in 4K whenever I finally get that nice supercut, Andy.
Yeah.
Come on, Andy.
And that's not even just some, like, the curtains are blue because they're representative of bullshit. Like, that's intentional because that's on all the box cover and everything. It's that bloody carved it, you know what I mean? Yeah.
I never noticed that. I knew it was torn up.
Right. Yeah.
That's pretty clever, Andy. You're a clever boy.
Clever boy.
Yeah. But I do like the character arc of Henry there, because even after that scene, I love how like they're all tearing after him and stuff. But as soon as he loses a knife, Henry starts just freaking out. He's like, "Oh, my old man's going to kill me."
Yeah.
And stuff.
That's the fear setting in. Fear is central to every interaction in this
and
movie.
so that's why I love that scene. Like, you know, after the rock fight and after he tries to shoot bottles and his dad just basically I would say scares him straight there specifically, but I feel like it's done more out of hate, because you could tell from the very beginning he's kind of fearful of like his dad as the authority figure, even though you don't have 100% confirmation at the beginning of the film that's his dad as the police officer.
Right.
But whenever, like, because after that happens and stuff, it's like that awkward thing, like, you know, whenever, like, I'm sure we've had that one friend where the dad was, like, kind of hard ass overall there specifically and kind of scares the kid straight, and then it's just that awkward of standing there and stuff.
Right.
Where basically it's just like dead silence. You could tell Henry's at his lowest point. Again, just fearful of everything else. And then just seeing that balloon scene with the knife and even adding the dirt crumbs and everything there specifically. I feel like it's done very well up to the point where he decides to basically get rid of his dad.
Right.
Which is very brutal.
Yeah, it is. And you can tell, there's little hints in there. They don't spell it out for you, but like you could probably assume that his dad's like an alcoholic beater.
Oh yeah, he's not an upstanding citizen by any means.
Because he's like passed out on the chair already and like drunk, like in the middle of the day whenever he gets killed. So like it's probably not the best. Probably not the best pops.
Oh yeah, for sure. But you explained a rock scene like that, just him starting to become fearful that the ones he was picking on have now retaliated. I can appreciate that scene a little bit more now and stuff. It's still not going to be my favorite scene of the whole movie.
No,
but
I'm not saying it was executed 100%.
But
amazingly.
you liked what they were going for there, so I think that's perfectly and totally fair. But yeah, I feel like these real life horrors that they're able to implement there, with Ben basically having to face the bully there, Bill having to face losing a sibling like that, Mike losing his parents in a house fire there, and that's the thing he's afraid of most, is just hearing his parents' screams and seeing like those melted hands crawl out. And not to mention like the very, very abusive relationship of Beverly's father there, which I will say it's one of those things that whenever it comes to dealing with subjects like that, of like there's clear assault that's occurred between them and stuff, I thought it was done very respectfully and tastefully there. And so I feel like it's very good that they're able to still address it, still get the point across without just rubbing it in your face.
And that's the power of these actors, I feel like, is because, Beverly did a really good job of just being afraid around her father, such you knew that there was some sort of abuse happening. And then the little details in the dialogue of him just being like, "You're still my little girl, aren't you?" Is like, okay, like, I get the picture.
Yeah. But there's like a lot of moments that I do kind of appreciate, because I feel like, again, Beverly, she is played so well. Like one of my favorite moments is like whenever she comes back home after picking up the tampons and stuff, and he basically starts playing with her hair and stuff in a very, very uncomfortable way there, specifically that her instinctive response is just to cut off her hair. Specifically just because she hates being in the situation that she is and everything she's dealt with, and just that overall fear. Because really, I would say out of the Losers Club, she's probably one of the least fearful people there. Like, she's usually one that's not afraid. I mean, you talk about that cliff scene, she was like running off there. And taking the leap, and
that shows that she's bold in a confronter, and she does that several times in the film. But she still has this like intense fear at home that she's avoiding by sneaking out. You know what I mean? And it isn't until later. I really like how the fears were personified in retrospect, because at the time I didn't quite piece it together. But you notice how Bev is like attacked by hair in the sink or whatever. Right? And like at the time I didn't quite piece it together, but like after the fact I'm like, oh, because that hair represented her father, that's why she cut it off, and then it was down in the sink. It's still there, her dad's still there, her source of her fear is still there, and that's why she was getting attacked by her own hair that she flushed down the sink there.
And then there's all that blood that came out. That was an Evil Dead amount of blood.
And here's what's really interesting about that scene in particular, right? So you notice with some of the other scenes where the kids see their fears, like take a fat kid in the library, Ben. He goes down in the basement because he's like pursuing the past of Derry or whatever. Sees these dead burned people and the burned Easter egg and everything, and so his fear is related to the history that he sees, and he gets chased out by Pennywise. But his fears disappear as soon as he bumps into the librarian lady, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Ooh," and he runs out. But like, because the adult was there, suddenly all the fears go away, right? But with Beverly's scene, all the blood and gore and horror is still there when her dad walks in because he is the source of her fear, right?
Bruh.
Yeah.
I'm so sad I never put two and two together.
And that's
but
why
I totally...
And that's why it's the first scene where she's like, you don't see this, and he's like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And
Yeah.
He's like, I'm worried about you, or whatever.
Yeah.
Because he is the fear, and then all the kids come in later and clean it up because they still see it because they're all connected to her fear. But...
No, I find the kids' fears to be very interesting, which is why, like, and we could talk about this, but towards the end of the film, whenever they have to confront Pennywise for the finale, that I really liked that overall fight there specifically. So we'll definitely talk more about it, especially all of their fears and stuff.
Right.
I did want to ask you about this before I forget. And before I forget to ask that, one of the other scenes that I also felt like, again, kind of was like, it feels like a little goofy, but I understand, is whenever they're cleaning the blood in the bathroom there specifically.
That was a little wacky.
Yeah.
It was like funny cleaning montage,
Yeah.
but they were cleaning like horrific amounts of
And
blood.
like, I understand, like, they need a lot of light moments like that, but I feel like that's what Richie is there for.
Right. And
A
I also
lot.
feel like that wasn't light in nature. They were helping heal trauma. Like, there's nothing about that was light except for they put the light music over it.
Yes, exactly. So I wasn't a big fan of that either. I felt like that dragged on a little bit too long,
Yeah.
but let's talk about that triangle, because you seemed very curious to
love
talk about it.
triangle. I always feel like it's weird whenever you're doing, two things that I think is weird. Romances of children is always a little weird to me, but I get it. People love at every age, and, sometimes movies are about that. There's some great movies about childhood love. But it's always just a little weird to me watching kids fall in love. And the other thing that's weird to me is romance subplots in a horror movie. There's a lot of subplots in this movie, but I get it. It's a lot of, book conflict that they're putting into a movie and how it's adapted, and it is just something else that you're looking for, and it fits into that second theme I was talking about of growing up. Coming of age. Literally, one of the characters has a bar mitzvah. It's all about these people transcending youth, going into adulthood, and love is part of that. I get it, but it was, it was a little weird. And it's also kind of like a Debbie Downer of, like, the fat kid falls in love with the nice girl, and she doesn't love him because he's the fat kid. And it's like, well, that's kind of depressing because he's a nice guy, and she likes, Ben. Or what's his name? Bill. Too many B names. And then is disappointed when Bill isn't the one that wrote the poem. Also, that poem just seemed a little too cheesy to me when it was read aloud. I feel like in print it would have been good. But like read aloud, I'm like, from a 12-year-old, I was just like, ooh, a little cringe.
Dude, you have no idea. The book is worse.
Oh, I bet, because it's a Stephen King book, and he writes a lot of weird, borderline pedophilic things.
Well, he did.
Yeah.
Without spoiling too much, because as soon as you're like, yeah, it's weird, and I'm like, I'm
familiar with some of the weird shit Stephen King has written about
so you
kids.
know about the scene?
I don't know this one specifically. What scene is in this?
So this is in a novel. I don't believe this was ever adapted on screen, and it doesn't need to be. I like Stephen King. This is one of those things where I'm like, Steve, bruh.
Steve.
But basically, all of the kids have an orgy.
Oh, is that this book?
Yeah, it's this book, and so Beverly is like teaching him, like, you got to put your thing in me, and they all do it. Yeah,
Stephen King.
Yeah. So as soon as you're like, yeah, it's weird whenever they're proclaiming their love as 12-year-olds, I'm like, bruh, I am happy to see this.
that it's just this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank God they didn't try to adapt that part to screen.
I'm not going to talk further about it because A, it's in the book.
Right. We're not talking about the book.
B, it's just one of those weird things to talk about. I know we're called Poppin the Scary and everything, but we got to keep it legal around here.
Yeah. It's Stephen King has a long legacy with that. Just give it a Google search of all the weird things he's written about children. But
people that are interested in it probably just watch the movies.
Yeah.
Probably just do that overall. But I do. Whenever it comes to the love triangle, which it is in the book there, I do like it specifically because of the overall arc it takes there specifically. Because, again, it starts off because, like, you know, Beverly is the one person that's super nice to Ben, to where like nobody signed his yearbook or anything because he's like kind of a big recluse. He's only even in the losers club because he was running away from the bullies and bleeding, and they're like, okay, well, we got to help this kid. That's the only reason why he got introduced to there specifically. But I do like that he kind of falls in love because, trust me, I personally can relate to falling hard after that one girl who was like super nice to me, and I would pursue him, and inevitably, no matter how much nice things I did or now we connected, or even if the girl was super sweet to me, it just never happened, and she ended up falling for someone else there specifically. But it is done a little weird because I feel like she starts to gravitate more towards Bill than Ben specifically, because she just views Ben as a friend and everything. So I feel like it does have that weird triangle dynamic to where I feel like it ultimately reaches a conclusion, but it's not like a complete soundproof conclusion, if that makes sense, because inevitably it's just like one of those things that she, you know, towards the end, it seems like Beverly and Bill are more so together and stuff, because Bill runs up to give like that one final kiss.
Right. And they're all three B names too, I just realized. Beverly, Bill, Ben. Get more creative, Steve.
Beater. Hey, Peter.
Hey, Peter.
All right. But no, I did not notice that. A lot of bees going around.
Yeah.
But yeah, I totally agree with what you say. But I do kind of like the postcard also, I feel like, is very integral.
Right.
But both to the triangle and just the story there. Because again, it's only because of that postcard where Beverly has to finally face her fears of her dad. And basically, because he finds it there specifically. And mind you, he finds it in the underwear drawer, which makes it even more unsettling and creepy.
What was he doing in the underwear drawer?
Yeah, doing that is like, what were you doing in the underwear drawer?
Right.
So I feel like it's really done well, and I feel like the words which do come from the novel, like, you know, the poem is a nice one. It's like short, simple, and I do like how it's used throughout the film, like whenever after they're cleaning the blood scene basically, and Beverly and Bill's in the bathroom, and she just says like the first line of the poem, and he's like, what?
Right.
You know, he says like poem, he's like, oh, I don't know poems.
Right. I do. I agree with you there. I think it was used well, and it carried the plot, and it was
and the
well
thing
written.
And the thing I like about the love triangle is that it's more an innocent love triangle. I feel like it's never deliberate like a lot of love triangles you see of them knowing. I think like some of them start to catch wind more so from the other's perspective than the people in the triangle, but I feel like it's done respectfully, and I don't feel like neither Bill, Beverly, or Ben were being like wrong or hateful or anything else like that. But yeah, it's definitely weird to focus on like a child romance as romantic as they make it in the film.
Which that's not even like my main issue, because again, I do feel like I don't have like a hard and fast issue with childhood romances or even childhood sexuality, because like, let's not pretend in high school we weren't just horny kids.
Oh yeah.
That's how kids are.
Yes.
Regardless of what the law says. Because that's just the biology. And I don't mind that represented tastefully. But yeah, it did seem a little like, I don't know, at times out of place or overly focused.
The times I would find it very appropriate is Richie just being like, you know, like, this is as long as my wang.
Yeah, that's the kind of childhood
or like doing your mom.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that I was like, yep, that checks out.
Yeah. But then whenever it comes to more kind of like passionate.
Right, the sorts of scenes where they're all in their underwear diving in the water. And
Yeah.
they're like looking at each other, and I was like, was this necessary for this movie? If this was a movie about exploring, but at the same time, I get it. A big part of this is coming of age, growing up, you know, that kind of thing. I just like didn't think the Piper Pieri poster was necessary, where there's 6 boys looking at a girl.
Yeah, it reminds me very much of like Sandlot era. Again, like those 80s films.
Right.
There specifically. So I totally get you. I feel like it's just moments like that where it's like, okay, you know, but again, I feel like it's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And trying to think about other moments in the film specifically there, I do like how each of the kids are having to face their fears. Although, again, you don't get to see every kid tortured by it specifically. Like, I don't believe we ever get to see Richie be scared by it. All you hear is he says, "I'm afraid of clowns."
Right. And that's the sort of the weird thing. I mean, like, I kind of like that because whenever they all get together and they're talking about how they've all seen this thing, Richie's the only one that hasn't. But then they're like, "What are you afraid of?" And he's like, "I'm afraid of clowns." So
yeah, and then later in the house, whenever they're walking through, room filled with clowns.
Exactly.
Which let's talk about like each of the fear things there specifically. I do like how each kid responds to that fear initially, and I do love how much Pennywise screws with them just to harvest that fear from them overall.
And they each conquer a fear before going into Pennywise's lair the second time. You'll notice, and that's why they're able to defeat him. Right? Because we can go through them and we can see some of them don't get as much screen time.
Let's go through them because Bill's fear overall was Georgie and just feeling like that remorse about the fact that he feels like Georgie's disappearance and or death is because he wasn't there to protect him because he was in bed sick. So how does he get...
His is interesting because I think his fear of losing Georgie gets replaced with his fear of about to be losing Beverly. And so he has to go save her while there's still time because he knows Georgie. He knows deep down in his heart that Georgie is lost, and he doesn't really confront that fear until he's in the lair.
Until the very end.
And Georgie walks up to him, and of course it's not Georgie.
Which I felt like was a well done scene.
Right. I think he was the last puzzle piece, but all the other ones confront their fear before getting there.
Okay. Let's talk about Stan being afraid of that painting.
Yeah, so he actually, there's like a scene where he does his bar mitzvah before he arrives there, and that was sort of like the crux of his fear, I feel like, was like disappointing his father and yada yada, and it was kind of personified by that painting of the woman in the church, you know? His fear was like not being a good Jew, you know? And I feel like he kind of conquered that before he went.
Yeah, I still feel like he was still kind of afraid because Pennywise used it against him, like finding the face. Yeah,
they were all confronted their fears again. Like Pennywise threw it at them, but they had already conquered it once, so they were able to do it again. You know what I mean? He did get his face fucking bit off before his friends went and saved him. But you'll notice, like, hypochondriac kid,
Eddie,
yeah, he realized it's a placebo and confronted his mom for overprotecting him or whatever.
They're gazebos.
Mike got over it once he was in the house the first time and kind of got traumatized. He was like, fine, whatever, I can kill these sheep now. And you see him like killing the sheep.
Yeah.
So he's like becomes a man in a sense. Who else? Beverly literally kills her father. But then she's confronted with the fear, like immediately after killing her father. She's like, I killed a man, and she's afraid of that. And that's when Pennywise arrives and takes her. Who else?
There's Richie.
Richie, yeah, but his fear was like clowns. Like he wasn't really... He wasn't being confronted by Pennywise beforehand.
And then I believe the other one is Ben.
Ben, yeah. I guess they didn't really give him anything, did they? Because
he got afraid of the boy, who he found like to get the decapitated head of in the tree there, and that scared him. But here's the interesting thing that's only in the novel, and I have read this part. But during like the scene, like the final scene against Pennywise there specifically, you see like those bandages wrap around Ben's head. Yeah. He's afraid of the mummy in the novel, but they don't talk about it in the movie. That's why. So it's like one of those weird things that if you saw the book, because I'm sure you're like, well, what is Pennywise doing now?
Yeah, I did not get that, so I'm glad I have that context.
Yeah, so me too. I'm glad I also have that context as well, because like I said, I've tried to read a majority of it. I'm still working my way through. I haven't even gotten to the one scene. Like I said, I only heard about it from other people where I was like, wait, that happened? And so then I'm like, oh man, I don't know. So once I get to that scene, I'll let you know how it was.
Please
Just
don't.
how uncomfortable it was. I'll just say, like, you'll know how I feel about the scene just by saying I read it.
I read it.
But yeah, so I do like the kids being confronted by their fears and stuff. I mean, like, one of my favorite moments is Eddie. Like, I feel like Eddie's like horribly traumatized and stuff. Just like whenever, because I do love that aspect of the fact of like how overwhelmingly present his mom is, specifically to where it's like suffocating him. But you don't feel like he's a big mama's boy either, because you know he pretty much tells people off, and he knows his stuff. Like, he's really smart. Like, whenever Ben's bleeding, he knows exactly what to grab there specifically. But I was actually going to mention something interesting. So, you know, the one scene where he like falls backwards and stuff after seeing the leopard there specifically, and Pennywise crawls out of the fridge there and stuff. I love that scene a ton, but I love the scene even more because apparently, like, Bill, whenever he was like screaming in his face and just torturing him and doing that, and Eddie's like screaming and crying, and they cut the cameras, Bill was like, hey, I'm really sorry, are you doing okay? And he's like, oh man, you were great, you were amazing, like completely like not traumatized. He's like, that was awesome. But no, and that's the thing I love about Bill Skarsgård in his movie is, like, again, he has that playful nature of playing with his food there specifically. I mean, one of the things that I'm surprised you haven't commented on, which I'm sure is because of the spoilers, is whenever they decide, hey, let's go to this house, this is where all the sewers are connected at there specifically, and it's basically Richie and Bill in a room with 3 doors where it says not scary at all, scary, or really scary.
And they pick the one that says not scary at all.
And you hear a girl saying, I can't find my shoes. And then they turn on the light, and it's just a girl cut in half screaming and shaking violently and stuff. I don't know what you thought about that scene, seeing those 3 doors.
I knew they were gonna pick the door that said nothing scary at all, and I knew there was gonna be something scary in there. But once those doors popped up, I was like, which one would I pick? Because like they're all gonna be scary.
Yeah.
I probably would have picked the same door.
Yeah.
But they conquered their fear. You know, they went in, they screamed, and then they closed the door, and he was like, it's not real, it's not real, it's not real. And then they opened it, and it wasn't there. And that's whenever Pennywise gets, like, concerned for the first time. He's busy trying to eat Eddie, and then he sees that, like, oh, they got past my trick or whatever, because they realized it wasn't real. And then he's like, am I not real enough for you?
Yeah, I just love just how goofy and, again, just predatory he is and stuff, that you just feel like, you know, he's not just like a dude in makeup and stuff screwing around. Like, he's just this monstrous being that takes the form of a clown there.
The one thing that did just, like, I wasn't sold on it was when they were digging through the lore of this town, they're like, man, this shit happens all the time. It's been happening since the 1800s.
Yeah,
they formed this
every
town,
27 years.
Right. And they have this old-ass drawing that looks like it's from the Continental Congress, and somebody just drew Pennywise in there. And, like, he's always been part of this town, but, like, were clowns even, like, a thing? I don't know. Is that what...
Yeah.
Why a clown?
Yeah, there's a lot of lore behind Pennywise that doesn't really answer anything. It just gets weirder.
What's up with the well? You know, like they point all this stuff to, you know, like, okay, it's this well. Okay, he's a clown that killed. It's an evil that's rooted in the city ever since its founding. A bunch of Indians died and they blamed it on the plague or whatever. But, you know, it's like, what? If he's like some cursed spirit that infests the land, why is he personified as a clown throughout every part of history? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he's painted into all these old... And you can see his face in the pit. It's just, like, weird, bro. Like, I feel like it wasn't satisfying. If he was, like, one of the kids that died in the Easter egg explosion, or he was, you know, a killer that they never caught, or something. You know, if they had some other explanation, I would have bought it more.
Well, without getting too much into spoilers, the sequel definitely starts to answer those questions.
Okay, good.
Kind of.
I just want a more satisfying answer of like why.
Because I'm sure you could probably imagine, but the sequel takes place 27 years later, and that's how the book is. It jumps between 27 years, and it jumps back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, which is why I was like, if I'm going to show him it, I'd rather show him the remakes because it tells it like a straight-laced story and not the back and forth perspective there. And even though that's how the book originally was, it was one of those things like, if I show the remake and stuff, I'm not sure how he'll take it, as opposed to, you know, watching the remake first, then the miniseries where it jumps back and forth and you know the whole story there.
Right.
Specifically. So that's why I went the direction I did specifically there. So it'll be interesting because inevitably we will watch it chapter 2 as it's called, but that's just for a different day and time, you know, just maybe not let it sit for 27 years, or I don't know if it'll even be 27 episodes later. We'll have to see.
27 days.
Yeah, 27 days. Maybe go with that. But there is a lot of lore behind it without spoiling too much for the future films. But I don't think it's the answers you're going to be like complete sound with either. But that'll be for a different day. One of my favorite scenes, this is related to Pennywise. It's stupid and I love it and would never change anything of it, is after Beverly is kidnapped and she wakes up in the sewers there and she just hears Pennywise speak. She'll be like, Pennywise, a dancing clown. And it does. He's just starting to dance super violently as he's doing like this death stare.
And the camera like stabilizes on his face, but everything else is moving. Like,
yeah, because like it's not. He's called the dancing clown, but you never see him dance at all. So this is like the one time where it's like
he's dancing.
And it's just that's the one time where I'm like, okay, I don't think it necessarily adds anything, but I'm happy this is in the movie. Right. There specifically.
Are there other circus characters? Because when he talks to Georgie in the beginning, obviously he's like just enticing him to come closer. But he's like, a storm blew us all down here, the whole circus. And he's talking about how he's got popcorn and beans down there. And like, is it just Pennywise down there? Or is there a whole circus? It'd be cool if there's a whole circus.
Dude, you're really going to be disappointed with the sequel if you're looking for a circus. I don't like spoiling stuff, but no circus Soleil down there. No Clussy.
Man, you could do some scary shit with like a bearded woman and the strong man and also killing people.
Yeah, I'm curious on what you'll think about it in the future. There will definitely be some very bizarre scenes. I can promise you that.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
But looking more at the film specifically, another small thing that I like a ton to the point where I actually got a sign of it is whenever it's been a couple of months after the Losers group disbands because basically they barely escaped Pennywise and stuff out of the house just because Beverly came in to save the day and stab him. And anyways, whenever Eddie goes up to the pharmacy to get his prescription refilled, as he learns that they're placebos, that she's like, oh, you don't have any friends? Well, I could sign your cast and just write loser. And again, it doesn't really focus on it because he just kind of looks down and makes a weird face at it. And then later you see him like take like a red marker and change the S to a V. To the point, which here it is right there.
Oh, he's got a sign that says loser, and then the V covers the S.
Yeah, so it's like one of those like small touch scenes. I'm like, okay, I like that scene.
Well, that's also kind of how they saved Bev too, with the power of love, because you know, there's Ben who really loved her, kisses her unconscious floating body, and that's the only thing that they do that like actually wakes her up and brings her back. So they're changing their loser club to the lovers club, and that's why they have an orgy in the woods.
You're welcome. Oh my god,
Stephen King's actually brilliant and not a pedophile.
I do love that final fight scene where the kids are circling around just beating up on Pennywise, and Pennywise is trying to scare them all in like going to every fear. And I do love the opening line that Richie says whenever Pennywise is trying to take Bill away as hostage. It's saying, like, I'll eat him, and I won't bother you for 27 years, where you'll be old and happy, and then you'll return to the weeds.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love how he's like, and now you're gonna make me find an effing clown.
Yeah.
Like, I thought that was a well done thing, and just seeing
That's
him
him.
wail on the clown is
Right. Because
Yeah.
that was him confronting his fear.
yeah. But I do like how that scene wraps up there specifically, and Pennywise slipping away. I'm assuming you probably knew that Pennywise wasn't dead just by slipping away.
Right. Because it's like
Mhm.
part of his head explodes or whatever, and he slips away, but he's like, fear or whatever. And it became pretty obvious to me that they were going to come back because they all huddled around in a circle by the bridge after that. And they were like, if he ever does come back, we're going to come back here as adults, right? And they were all like, yep. And I was like, well, there's the sequel.
Yeah. And sequel. No, I think for how the film wraps up, I feel like it wraps up nicely there specifically. Was there any other moments that you felt like in it you liked a ton or thought was well done or maybe not so well done?
I do think so. His like he constantly has multiple rows of teeth that pop out whenever he eats people, and like I thought when he first did it to Georgie, that was actually like the cheesiest part of that scene.
Yeah.
I was just like, okay. Like I could see, like it just seemed a little over the top. But then whenever he did the time he did it, where like his face peeled back like a banana whenever he had Beverly down there, and he's like, she's like, I'm not scared of you, and he's like, you will be or whatever. And then like, I was like, that part was scary, and she's just like staring into this glowing hole in the middle of his mouth. Overall, I feel like the effects, like that kind of stuff, were creative and really well done overall. I just think there were 1 or 2 points where they were a little cheesy.
I will say, seeing Georgie's arm ripped off of a little child, especially, was definitely kind of creepy and unsettling there in him.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But I could see the little like crunch
Yeah,
there being a little goofy. Okay, one thing that this is like one of those random things where I liked it a ton whenever I first saw it was one of the Bowers bullies, the one with the black hair and the yellow shirt and stuff, where he has like the aerosol can and the lighter and stuff. I like that scene for some reason very well whenever he's like entering the sewers trying to look for Ben. He's like, and you see it just light up, and then it just reveals all like the zombies of all the kids there, and then whenever he starts freaking out and ends up coring himself, you just see the floating balloon, and as it pops you just see Pennywise appear. I thought that was a really well done scene.
You know what I bet they took a lot of inspiration from for that? Was fucking Alien with the flamethrower in the ship when the lights are out, and she's like
yeah,
she uses that to light it up.
Who was cooler, Ripley with a flamethrower
or Patrick with a can of hairspray and a lighter?
You decide.
Tough one.
He even had like short dark hair just like Ripley.
And he was in his underwear and
no, that was the Losers Club. But yeah, I think there's a lot to this film that's really good, and so I knew you would probably enjoy that it wasn't your typical horror film of just like, killer clown run around, because really, again, Pennywise, surprisingly for the film being called It, doesn't play like the biggest part of it. He's a big part, but not the biggest. Right. It's more about these kids focusing on each other there, and it's incredible that all of them survived to the end of the movie, because I'm sure you were expecting some kids to die.
Yeah, probably. I mean, especially since Georgie dies in the first scene. I did wonder if he was gonna like come back since all the kids were floating down, and I was like, I just don't know. So he obviously didn't. They probably would have said it, and it didn't seem like any of the other kids really made it back. I don't know.
Yeah, I think they were just floating corpses there, basically, where Pennywise fed off their fear and themselves. There, but yeah, they keep it very vague on what happens there specifically. So maybe it explains it better in the book. There, haven't got into that point at all. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. So I feel like overall, I think we've pretty much exhausted talking about it specifically and all the stuff there. Definitely still really enjoyable film overall. I think there's a lot of merit to it.
I think so
and would you recommend for people to watch this, even if they're afraid of horror in general?
Yeah, I feel like this one isn't that spooky. I mean, if you're just scared by any horror movie, obviously skip this one because it's a horror movie. There are scary scenes. I don't feel like it's incredibly scary. And I do feel like, yeah, it's interesting in the fact that it is a horror movie. It is in that genre, but it's not necessarily... I feel like the point of this movie wasn't necessarily to just make you poop your pants so much as it was to tell a story, which is, it sounds like duh, but a lot of horror movies, the story is secondary just to make you poop your pants, you know, I mean, to introduce a scary character or concept or something. But I feel like this one was the opposite. Like, it was just, you know, the Pennywise the clown was just a tool in which to tell a story, and the story happened to be a scary story.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting one for sure. I mean, I would, if you're curious about it and you wanted to watch it, yeah, it's a good one. Go ahead and pop it in. But it's not, if you're anticipating or you want just like a classic slasher, scary horror kind of dealio, like this one isn't what that. It's not what you're looking for if that's what you're looking for. But.
Yeah. And I guess a final question I'll ask is, who's your favorite Losers Club member?
Probably Reggie. Yeah.
That's fair. I didn't know because like he made so many quips throughout the movie there, and I know you were like pretty quiet.
Some of them were pretty fucking lame, but he's also like a kid making jokes, so like you expect some of them to be lame, but he was pretty funny.
Okay. Yeah.
He wasn't the annoying comedic relief that you see in a lot of horror movies.
True. Yeah. There's a lot of annoying comedic reliefs in these horror films, and Richie is definitely one of the better examples of it. I feel like overall he's probably my third favorite, second probably Eddie, and then first being Beverly. I just feel like
Beverly's either first or second for me.
No, definitely a compelling character overall. But yeah, so we're going to put a bookmark in the It series before we reach the conclusion with Chapter 2. Yeah. So we are going to jump into teasers for the next episode. And Aaron, with this next film we are going to watch, it is going to be a sequel, just not to It.
Okay.
But
it's the squeakquel. Alvin and the Chipmunks.
How'd you know? That film is terrifying beyond all human comprehension.
Chipmunks, scurry. They will eat your nuts.
But instead, I hope you're ready to go camping, buddy.
Is it Friday the 13th too?
You betcha. Friday the 13th part 2. So, yep, we're going to be checking that out on the next episode. So, thank you all so much for listening to this episode. If you haven't already, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, get that interaction going on.
Hit the bell.
Hit that bell icon.
I noticed that only 10% of our viewers are subscribed.
So, what's the 90% doing?
Please hit that red button and the check mark.
Slap that bell. Slap it.
It helps us keep the lights on.
Do it.
Please.
You want free entertainment? Go to heck.
Yeah.
God.
We don't do this for free. We do this for the sick amounts of money that we get from all of our streams.
This video is sponsored Coca-Cola. How the heck did we get them to sponsor us? I have no idea.
We didn't ask.
No.
We're just making them sponsors.
But no, seriously, anything you do helps out a ton. But until then, be sure to stay tuned for the next episode where we'll be popping the scary with Friday the 13th part 2.
It's a long day.
Yeah, you'll float too.
You'll
float too.
You'll float too.
Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube, Castbox, or iTunes platforms to stay up to date when new episodes drop. To see what Aaron and I are up to, check out our respective Twitter accounts. For me, it is @ColeKirkVA, and for Aaron, it is @AnimalGameDev. Thank you all so much for listening to our podcast. We'll speak to you all again next time when we're poppin' the scary.